What if the only map to a fortune buried for 80 years wasn't hidden in a vault or scrawled on parchment, but branded into the scarred hide of a horse nobody wanted, a dying veteran, a disabled mare with a secret written in fire, and a mystery that would turn a final act of kindness into the most impossible treasure hunt in American history? This is the story of how one broken soldier and one broken animal found each other in the ruins of their lives and unearthed something far more valuable than gold. If you believe in second chances and the mysterious bonds between humans and horses, please hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps our channel grow and share more stories just like this one. The town of Ridgemont, Kansas, sits in the flat heart of the plains, a place where the wheat fields stretch to the horizon like a golden ocean frozen in time. It is a small town, population 1-200, where everyone knows everyone's name, their business, and their sorrows. The main street is 3 blocks long, a hardware store, a diner with cracked vinyl booths, a post office that doubles as the town's gathering place. The grain elevator rises like a cathedral on the edge of town, casting its long shadow across the railroad tracks that no longer carry passengers, only the occasional freight car rumbling through in the dead of night. It is a town that has seen better days, a town where the young leave and the old remain, tending to memories and mortgages. In the autumn of 2019, the leaves on the cottonwood trees turned a brittle yellow, and the wind carried the smell of harvest dust and diesel fuel. It was in this season that Tim Henley, 60 years old, his body a catalog of old wounds and older regrets, made a decision that would change everything. Tim lived alone in a small rented house on Maple Street, a sagging structure with peeling white paint and a porch that groaned under his weight. His right leg was stiff, the knee destroyed by shrapnel in Fallujah in 2004. His hearing in his left ear was gone, taken by the same IED that had killed his driver and his best friend, a kid from Tennessee named Danny Rourke. Tim walked with a cane, a sturdy oak stick he'd carved himself during the long months of recovery at the VA hospital in Wichita. His disability check arrived on the first of every month, $1,847. It covered rent, utilities, groceries, and the medications that kept the pain at a manageable roar. It was not much, but it was steady. It was survival. Tim had no family left. His parents were dead, his father from a heart attack, his mother from pneumonia. He'd been married once, a brief union that had ended while he was overseas. No children, no siblings. His only companions were the other veterans at the VFW hall on Thursday nights, men who spoke in half sentences and understood the silences in between. He was a man living on the edges of his own life, present but not participating, breathing but not quite alive. On a cold Tuesday morning in October, Tim sat at the Formica table in his kitchen, staring at the envelope from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Inside was his monthly check. He held it in his calloused hands, feeling the thin paper, the official print, the weight of what it represented. Rent was due in 3 days. The pharmacy had called twice about his prescriptions. The furnace needed repair before winter truly set in. This check was his lifeline. It was oxygen. But Tim Henley was tired. He was tired of the pain, tired of the nightmares, tired of the quiet, echoing house. He was tired of watching the calendar, counting down months and years to nothing in particular. He had been thinking, for weeks now, about the livestock auction on the edge of town. He had driven past it on his way to the VA clinic, seen the pens full of horses, cattle, goats. He had no reason to go there. He had no land, no barn, no use for an animal, but something about it called to him. A memory, maybe. A ghost of a different life. He folded the check and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He picked up his cane and walked out the door. The auction yard was a sprawling mess of metal pens and wooden chutes. The ground churned to mud and manure. The smell was thick, organic, alive. Tim paid the entry fee, $2, and walked into the auction barn, a cavernous metal building with bleachers on one side and a dirt ring in the center. The auctioneer's voice was a rapid-fire chant, numbers and bids flying too fast for Tim's damaged hearing to follow. He sat in the back row, his cane propped against his knee, watching. Cattle came through, solid Herefords and Anguses, bought by local ranchers with quick nods. Goats, squealing and kicking. A few saddle horses, sleek quarter horses that fetched decent prices. Then she came in. A mare, a bay with a coat the color of burnt mahogany. She was thin, her ribs visible beneath her dull, matted hide. Her head was low, her eyes half closed. She limped on her right front leg, favoring it with every step. But it was her side that made the crowd go silent. Along her right flank, from shoulder to hip, was a massive scar. It wasn't a clean line. It was a sprawling, twisted burn, the kind that spoke of fire and agony. The hair had grown back in patches, white and pink, creating a jagged, chaotic pattern. Some of the men in the crowd muttered. A few laughed dark, dismissive sounds. "Dog food," someone said. The auctioneer started the bidding at 100. Silence. He dropped it to $50. Nothing. The mare stood in the center of the ring, swaying slightly. Her breathing labored. She looked, Tim thought, like he felt. Used up. Discarded. Waiting for the end. $25, the auctioneer called, his voice losing its enthusiasm. "Come on, folks. She's still got some meat on her." Tim's hand went up. He didn't think about it. He didn't plan it. It was an instinct, a reflex, a response to something he couldn't name. The auctioneer's eyes found him. 25, I got Esor. 25. Do I hear 30? Silence. Sold. To the gentleman in the back. Tim walked down to the cashier's window, his cane tapping on the concrete. He pulled out his disability check and signed it over. The cashier, a woman with tired eyes and a cigarette tucked behind her ear, looked at him. "You know she's lame, right? And that scar, honey, that's a burn, old one. She's been through hell." "I know," Tim said. "Where do I pick her up?" The logistics were a nightmare Tim hadn't considered. He had no trailer, no truck capable of pulling one. He arranged for an additional $50 he didn't have, for the auction yard to deliver the mare to a small boarding stable on the outskirts of Ridgemont, a place called Havenfield Stables. It was run by a widow named June Patterson, a tough woman in her 70s who had seen every kind of horse and every kind of owner. Tim called her from the auction yard's office, his voice uncertain. "I just bought a horse. I need a place to keep her, just temporary, until I figure things out." June's voice was dry, skeptical. "You got money for board? It's $200 a month, includes feed and a stall." "I'll have it," Tim lied. The mare arrived that evening, backing off the trailer with a terrified, skittering gait. Tim was waiting, leaning on his cane, his breath misting in the cold air. June stood beside him, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Lord have mercy," June muttered, seeing the scar in the glow of the stable lights. "What happened to her?" "I don't know," Tim admitted. "She's lame," June observed. "Front right. Could be an old injury, could be navicular, could be a dozen things. You planning on riding her?" "No, I needed to get her out of there." June looked at him, really looked at him, taking in the cane, the stiff leg, the hollow look in his eyes. She sighed. "All right, let's get her settled." They led the mare into a stall, a small box with clean straw and a water bucket. The mare went in without resistance, as if she had no fight left. She stood in the corner, her head low, her scarred side facing the wall. Tim stood outside the stall, gripping the bars, watching her. "What are you going to call her?" June asked. Tim thought about it. He thought about the burn, the scar, the way she had stood in that auction ring, broken but still breathing. "Mary," he said. "I'll call her Mary." Tim visited Mary every day. He couldn't afford it. He couldn't justify it. But he came anyway, limping the half-mile from his house to Havenfield Stables, his cane biting into the gravel road. He brought apples, carrots, anything cheap he could find at the grocery store. Mary didn't warm to him. She didn't nicker when he approached. She didn't nuzzle his hand. She simply existed, a silent, scarred presence in the corner of her stall. June watched him with a mixture of pity and curiosity. "You know," she said one morning as Tim stood outside Mary's stall, "you can't save every broken thing in the world." "I'm not trying to save her," Tim said quietly. I don't know what I'm doing." "You bought a lame horse you can't afford," June said bluntly. "That's what you're doing." But there was no cruelty in her voice, just honesty. Tim spent hours studying the scar on Mary's side. It was strange, the pattern of it. It wasn't random. The more he looked, the more it seemed almost deliberate. The white and pink tissue formed shapes, lines, curves. One evening, as the sun set and the stable filled with long golden light, Tim stood outside the stall with a notebook and a pencil. He began to sketch the scar, tracing the lines as best he could from memory and observation. June found him there, hunched over the notebook, his hand moving slowly. "You drawing her?" she asked. "The scar," Tim said. It's weird. Look." He held up the notebook. June squinted at the rough sketch. Her eyes narrowed. "That almost looks like a brand, but I've never seen a brand that big or that messy." "It's not a brand," Tim said. "It's a burn, but it's shaped. See here? That's almost a letter. And there, that curve, it's too clean to be random." June leaned closer. "You think someone burned a message into this horse?" "I don't know what I think," Tim admitted. "But I want to find out." Tim's obsession grew. He began researching, spending hours at the Ridgemont Public Library, a small brick building with 2 computers and a librarian named Helen who knew everyone's reading habits. He searched for cases of horse abuse, unusual brandings, historical uses of equine markings. He found nothing that matched. On a cold Saturday morning, he brought a camera to the stable. June helped him coax Mary into the center of the aisle, where the light was best. The mare resisted, her body trembling, but she moved. Tim photographed the scar from every angle, dozens of shots, focusing on the details. That night, in his dim kitchen, he printed the photos at the library and spread them across his table. He studied them under a desk lamp, his reading glasses perched on his nose. The scar was roughly 4 feet long and 2 feet wide, a sprawling mass of scar tissue. But within the chaos, there were patterns. He saw what looked like numbers, a curve that resembled a letter, a straight line that intersected another at a precise angle. He traced them with his finger, muttering to himself. "It's a map," he whispered. The thought was insane. He knew it was insane. But the more he looked, the more convinced he became. The scar wasn't random. It was information. It was a code. He called the VA hospital in Wichita, asked to speak to the social worker who handled his case, a woman named Dr. Phyllis Grant. He trusted her as much as he trusted anyone. "Tim," she said, her voice warm and professional. "How are you doing?" "I need to ask you something strange," Tim said. "Do you know anyone who specializes in old military history? World War II specifically. Treasure, gold, that kind of thing." There was a pause. "Tim, are you okay? This doesn't sound like you." "I'm fine. I found something, I think. I need an expert." Dr. Grant sighed. "There's a professor at the University of Kansas. His name is Dr. Alan Richter. He's a historian, focuses on World War II, European theater, looted art, and gold. I met him at a conference. I can give you his contact." Tim called Dr. Richter the next day. The professor's voice was clipped, impatient. "Dr. Richter speaking. My name is Tim Henley. I'm a veteran. I was given your name by Dr. Grant at the VA. I think I found something. A map. On a horse." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, did you say on a horse?" "Yes, sir. A scar. A burned scar. It's shaped. It's got numbers, letters. I think it's a map to something. Mr. Henley, I don't have time for treasure hunters or conspiracy theorists." "I'm not a conspiracy theorist," Tim said, his voice hardening. "I'm a disabled combat veteran who bought a horse at an auction, and I'm trying to figure out why someone burned a map into her side. If you're not interested, just say so." Another pause. Then, softer, "Send me photos. Email them to my university address. I'll take a look. But I'm not promising anything." Tim sent the photos that night. He didn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. 2 days later, his phone rang. It was Dr. Richter. His voice was different now, urgent. "Mr. Henley, where did you get this horse?" "An auction, here in Ridgemont, Kansas." "Do you know where she came from before that?" "No, the auction yard didn't have records. She was a surrender. Anonymous." "Mr. Henley, I need to see this horse in person. When can I come to Kansas?" Tim's heart pounded. "You think it's real? The map?" "I think," Dr. Richter said slowly, "that what you found might be connected to one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of World War II. There's a legend, Mr. Henley. A story about a train full of Nazi gold that disappeared in 1945. The train was allegedly hidden by American soldiers who found it, men who planned to come back for it after the war. They never did. Most of them died. The location was lost. But there were rumors that one of them, a cavalry officer, left a map that couldn't be stolen or lost. A A map that could move. A horse, Tim whispered. Exactly, Dr. Richter said. I'll be there in 2 days. Dr. Alan Richter arrived in Ridgemont on a gray Thursday morning, driving a rented sedan that looked out of place on the dusty roads. He was a thin man in his 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and the distracted air of someone who lived more in the past than the present. Tim met him at Havenfield Stables. June was there too, her arms crossed, her expression skeptical. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "It's a scarred horse, not a treasure map." Dr. Richter ignored her. He walked directly to Mary's stall. The mare stood in her usual corner, her head low. He stared at her scarred side, his eyes widening. He pulled a notebook from his bag, flipped through pages of handwritten notes, old maps, photocopied documents. "May I enter the stall?" he asked Tim. "She's skittish," Tim warned. "Be slow." Dr. Richter moved with surprising gentleness. He approached Mary, murmuring softly, his hand extended. The mare flinched but didn't bolt. He stood beside her, his eyes inches from the scar, tracing the lines with his finger, not touching, just mapping. "My God," he whispered. "What?" Tim demanded. "It's real. This is real." Dr. Richter turned, his face flushed. "This scar, Mr. Henley, is a burn created using a technique called negative branding. It's the opposite of a normal brand. Instead of pressing a hot iron to the skin, you use extreme cold, liquid nitrogen or dry ice to kill the pigment cells. The hair grows back white. It was used experimentally by the military in the 1940s for marking equipment and occasionally for covert purposes. And this pattern, these numbers and lines, they match a coded system used by the 45th Cavalry Regiment in 1945. Tim's legs went weak. He leaned on his cane. "You're saying this horse was branded by American soldiers 80 years ago?" "No," Dr. Richter said. "This horse is maybe 15 years old. But the branding technique was replicated. Someone recreated the original map on this animal, someone who knew the story." Dr. Richter set up a makeshift workspace in June's office, a cluttered room filled with feed catalogs and veterinary records. He spread out his documents, his maps, his notes. He photographed Mary's scar again, this time with a professional camera and precise measurements. Tim and June watched, silent as he worked. "The legend," Dr. Richter began, speaking as he typed on his laptop, "goes like this. In April 1945, the 45th Cavalry Regiment, part of Patton's Third Army, discovered a train in a tunnel near the town of Merkers, Germany. The train was loaded with Nazi gold, art, stolen treasures. Officially, it was secured and turned over to the U.S. government. But there are persistent rumors that one single boxcar, was never reported. A group of 5 soldiers allegedly hid it, planning to retrieve it after the war. They created a map, but they knew a paper map could be lost, stolen, destroyed, so they used a horse, a cavalry horse, and branded the map into its hide. The plan was to bring the horse back to the States, keep it hidden, and return to Germany when the heat died down." "What happened to them?" Tim asked. 4 of them died within 2 years, 1 in a car accident, 2 from illness, 1 from suicide. The 5th, a man named Lieutenant James Collier, disappeared in 1947. No body was ever found. The horse, according to unverified accounts, ended up on a ranch in Kansas, Collier's family ranch. But the ranch was sold in the 1950s, and the horse vanished from the records. "You think this is that horse's descendant?" June asked. "No," Dr. Richter said. "I think someone in Collier's family, maybe a descendant who knew the story, recreated the brand on a new horse. A way to preserve the map, to keep the secret alive." "Why?" Tim asked. "Because the gold is still there," Dr. Richter said simply. "If the legend is true, there's a boxcar full of Nazi gold buried somewhere in Germany, and this horse is the only map to find it." The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Tim sat down heavily, his cane clattering to the floor. June paced, shaking her head. "This is insane," she said. "You're telling me that scarred mare out there is worth millions?" "The horse isn't worth millions," Dr. Richter corrected. "The information on her is, if we can decode the map, if we can find the location, then yes, we're talking about a fortune. Tens of millions, possibly more." Tim looked at the historian. "What do you need from me?" "I need access to the horse. I need time to decode the scar. And I need your permission to bring in a colleague, a cartographer, who specializes in military maps from the 1940s. Her name is Dr. Angeline Kim. She's at MIT. She's the best. Bring her, Tim said. Dr. Angeline Kim arrived 3 days later, a young woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and an air of quiet intensity. She and Dr. Richter worked for hours, photographing, measuring, cross-referencing. They used software to enhance the images, to isolate the white scar tissue from the pink, to map the coordinates. Tim watched, feeling useless. This was beyond him. He was just a broken veteran who had bought a horse on impulse. He had no claim to this. "Mr. Henley," Dr. Kim said one evening, looking up from her laptop, "we've got it." "Got what?" "The coordinates. The scar contains a set of longitude and latitude references, encoded using a military grid system from 1945. It points to a location in central Germany, near the town of Merkers, the same area where the original train was found. So the gold is in Germany," Tim said. "We think so. But there's a problem. The land where the coordinates point is now private property. It's owned by a German industrial company. Getting access will be difficult. And even if we get access, excavation will require permits, legal clearances, cooperation from the German government. This isn't a simple treasure hunt, Mr. Henley. This is an international legal and historical operation." Tim felt the weight of it crushing him. He was a man who could barely afford his rent. He had no legal team, no resources, no connections. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Dr. Richter exchanged a look with Dr. Kim. "We have two options. Option one, we go public. We present our findings to the media, to the German and American governments, to historians. We turn this into an official investigation. You'll get credit, recognition, maybe a finder's fee if the gold is recovered. But it will take years, maybe decades. And there's no guarantee you'll see a dime. And option two, we find a private investor, someone with the resources to fund an expedition, to handle the legal complexities, to excavate quietly. In exchange, they take a percentage of the find. You'd get a share, but it would be smaller, and it's riskier. There are treasure hunting firms that specialize in this kind of thing. Some are legitimate, some are not." Tim looked at Mary's stall. The mare was lying down, her scarred side visible in the dim light. She looked peaceful, unaware of the chaos her body had caused. "I don't want the money," Tim said. Both historians stared at him. "Excuse me?" Dr. Kim said. "I don't want the money. I want Mary to be safe. I want her to have a good life. Whatever happens, whatever you do, that's my condition. She doesn't get sold. She doesn't get hurt. She gets to live out her days somewhere safe." Dr. Richter smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "Mr. Henley, you're a rare man. I'll make sure that's written into any agreement we make. Mary will be protected. You have my word." "Then do what you need to do," Tim said. "Find the gold, but I'm going with you. If you go to Germany, I'm going too." Dr. Richter hesitated. "Mr. Henley, this will be physically demanding. The terrain, the excavation." "I'm going," Tim repeated, his voice hard. "That horse saved my life. I'm seeing this through." Dr. Kim nodded. "Then we'd better get started." The expedition took 6 months to organize. Dr. Richter and Dr. Kim partnered with a private historical recovery firm based in London, a company called Armitage and Locke that specialized in World War II artifacts and lost treasures. They negotiated access to the land in Germany, convincing the industrial company that owned it by offering them a share of any historical artifacts found. The German government was skeptical, but agreed to monitor the excavation. Tim sold everything he owned, his furniture, his truck, his few possessions. He borrowed money from the VFW, promising to pay it back. June, to his surprise, contributed $5,000 of her own savings. "You're a damn fool, Tim Henley," she said, pressing the check into his hand. "But you're my damn fool. Bring back something good." In March 2020, just as the world began to shut down from a pandemic no one saw coming, Tim Henley, Dr. Richter, Dr. Kim, and a team of excavators and historians flew to Frankfurt, Germany. They drove to Merkers, a small town in Thuringia, a place of rolling green hills and old stone buildings. The coordinates pointed to a forested area on the edge of the town, a hillside thick with oak and beech trees. The excavation began on a cold, misty morning. Ground-penetrating radar had confirmed an anomaly beneath the soil, a large metal object consistent with a railway boxcar. Tim stood at the edge of the dig site, leaning on his cane, watching as the excavators tore into the earth. Dr. Richter stood beside him. "How are you feeling?" the historian asked. "Terrified," Tim admitted. "What if it's not there? What if it's all a lie?" "Then we'll have solved a mystery," Dr. Richter said. "And that's worth something too." The dig went deep, 5 feet, 10 feet, 15, and then, on the third day, a shovel hit metal. The sound rang out across the site, sharp and unmistakable. The workers stopped. Dr. Kim descended into the pit, her hands brushing away dirt. She looked up, her face pale. "It's here," she called. "It's a boxcar, American military, World War II vintage." The excavation of the boxcar took another week. It was buried at an angle, half collapsed, its metal sides rusted and corroded. But it was intact. And when they finally pried open the doors, the interior was revealed. Gold bars, stacked floor to ceiling, hundreds of them, each one stamped with Nazi insignia. There were also crates of art, paintings wrapped in rotting canvas, jewelry, coins. It was a treasure beyond imagination. Tim stood at the edge of the pit, staring down at the gold. He felt nothing, no joy, no excitement, just a deep, profound exhaustion. "We did it," Dr. Richter said, his voice trembling. "Tim, we actually did it." The recovery process was a bureaucratic nightmare. The German government seized the find, as was their legal right. Negotiations began immediately. Armitage and Locke, the recovery firm, argued for a finder's fee. The German government argued that the treasure was stolen property and belonged to the descendants of the original owners, many of whom were Jewish families whose wealth had been looted by the Nazis. It took a year of lawyers, of mediators, of international committees. Tim returned to Kansas, to his small rented house, to Mary in her stall at Havenfield Stables. He resumed his quiet life, waiting. In the end, the settlement was this. The gold and art, valued at over $80 million, would be returned to the families of the original owners wherever they could be traced. The German government, in recognition of the historical significance of the find and the role of the American researchers, agreed to pay a finder's fee of $10 million to be split between the recovery firm, the historians, and Tim Henley. Tim's share was $2.5 million. When the check arrived, delivered by a lawyer from Armitage and Locke, Tim stared at it for a long time. He thought about the mare, the scar, the impossible chain of events that had brought him here. He thought about Danny Rourke, his friend who had died in Fallujah, who would never see this, who would never know. He deposited the check, and then he got to work. The first thing Tim did was pay off his debts, the rent, the medical bills, the loans from the VFW. Then he bought Havenfield Stables outright, paying June Patterson 3 times what it was worth and insisting she stay on as manager. He renovated the entire facility, new stalls, new fencing, a covered arena. He turned it into a sanctuary for retired and rescue horses. Mary lived out her days in a spacious pasture, green and rolling, with a shelter and a pond. Tim visited her every day. She never fully warmed to him, never nuzzled his hand or whinnied when he approached, but she tolerated him. And sometimes, on quiet mornings, she would stand beside him at the fence and he would rest his hand on her scarred side, feeling the warmth of her, the steady rise and fall of her breathing. Tim used the rest of the money to establish the Danny Rourke Foundation, a nonprofit that provided equine therapy for disabled veterans. He built a campus on the edge of Ridgemont, with barns and pastures and a residential facility. He hired therapists, trainers, veterinarians. He opened the doors to veterans from across the country, men and women who carried wounds both visible and invisible. The program was simple. Each veteran was paired with a rescue horse, an animal that had been broken or discarded or scarred. Together, they healed. Tim, at 62, found a purpose he hadn't known he was searching for. He found a community. He found a family. The story of the treasure, of the horse with the map burned into her hide, made international news. Documentaries were made. Books were written. Tim was interviewed, photographed, celebrated. He hated it. He gave one interview to a small local paper in Ridgemont, and then refused all others. In that interview, he said only this: I didn't find the gold, Mary did. I just listened. That's all any of us need to do. Listen to the things that have been hurt. They'll show you the way. Mary died peacefully in her sleep on a spring morning in 2023 at the age of 18. Tim found her in the pasture, lying in the grass, the sun warming her scarred side. He sat beside her for a long time, his hand on her neck, and he wept. They buried her on the hill overlooking the sanctuary, beneath an oak tree. The headstone was simple. Mary, she carried the map home. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another tale of courage, redemption, and the extraordinary bonds between humans and horses. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that second chances exist, and that sometimes the most broken things hold the greatest treasures.